to video games, nobody compares to Atari.
I find Intellivision more sophisticated and lifelike.
Gentlemen, move over for my friend Vic. The Commodore VIC-20.
Move over.
The Commodore VIC-20 does more than your machines. It's a great computer that also plays great games. Like this, and this, and this.
A computer that plays great games?
Under $300?
Exactly.
We didn't know.
Hi, welcome back to the Retro Shed. Now, I wasn't going to do a video this week at all. I'm quite busy this weekend doing bits and pieces, but as those bits and pieces relate to retro gaming and consoles and what have you, I thought I'd do a bit of filming and show you guys what I've been up to. Now, there's a job that I've been putting off for quite a while, and that is recapping my Amiga CD32. I bought it about a year ago, and it's mint and it's fine, but every time we sit and play it, I was aware that something could go pop. After all, it's quite an old machine. I think it's mid-90s it was manufactured. 93, I think, ours was manufactured. And reading on some of the Amiga forums and groups, those capacitors do swell and they do go pop and they are electrolytic. So once that gunk gets on the main board, it can be an expensive repair. So I ordered a full recapacitor kit for my Amiga CD32, and last night decided to delve in, rip it apart and see if I could solder well enough, I should say, to replace all the capacitors on the board. And here is how I got on. Okay, here's our lovely Amiga CD32 that we bought last year, and it's in pretty good condition, to be honest, but there is a problem, and that problem is every time I switch it on and play it, I think it's going to blow up because I've not replaced the capacitors in it, and it's a job that I don't really want to do, and it's a job that I've been putting off for quite a while now. But it's time I opened this lovely old machine up and got rid of all those old capacitors. It's a fiddly job, and it's one that I'm a bit nervous about doing in case I break it. So here's the capacitor kit that I bought from Retro Bench, and it contains a guide, as you can see there, and it's also got a bag full of capacitors. Every single capacitor on the Amiga CD32 board is in this bag, so it's just a question of stripping this old thing down, getting the board out and getting stuck into changing all those capacitors. Okay, right, manufactured in September 1993. God, I remember what I was doing in September 1993. Made in the Philippines, according to that. And it's time to pull it apart, so let's take these screws out and see whether I can get inside this thing. Okay, I managed to get the board out without breaking anything, and it does look very clean, very nice condition. It's a Revision 3 board. If you look at those capacitors there, you can see they've bulged at the top and there is a bit of leakage going on, so I think this job is overdue. It's time I started to think about swapping those out. And those little silver cans there, each one of those is a capacitor. And every single one of these on this board needs to be unsoldered carefully and taken out, and they are very, very small solder joints indeed. Right, that's a job I don't want to do again in a hurry. That's took me about 4 or 5 hours, and every cap on the board has been replaced carefully. I don't think I caused any damage, so if you look there you'll see those two there have been swapped out, and they're new and they're not bulging and they're not leaking. So let's get this board put back where it belongs in this case, and we can give it a test and see whether I've broken anything. Right, the board is back in the CD32 and we are all connected up. Bit nervous testing this actually, because a couple of times I raised the tracks off the board because my soldering iron was a bit too hot at one point and I panicked. So I turned the iron down, repaired the tracks on 2 of the capacitors, so now is a good time to see whether this thing will actually power up. That looks good. Well, I'm relieved at that, so hopefully I haven't broken anything to do with the optical drive. I don't think so. It's spinning, that's a good sign, that's always a good sign. That is an even better sign when you see the loading. Yeah, that looks good. That's quite a relief actually, because I did think I'd broken it. Yeah, that looks good. So, a bit touch and go there for a moment. I did lift a couple of the tracks off the board and panicked, but I'm glad I've done it. It's working, it's come through unscathed, and that's a job I really don't want to have to do again anytime soon. So hopefully our CD32 is good for another 10, 15 years or so, and I can play it in peace knowing that, well, it's unlikely to go bang. So today, I saw a couple of videos on YouTube in the week to do with people tidying up and fixing up the VIC-20, and I thought, wow, I love the VIC-20. It's a very important computer for me because it was probably the computer that was responsible for getting me interested in computers at home and responsible probably for the job that I do now in IT. At the time, I had a Philips G7000 console, which my parents bought me in 1978 or 79. And it was okay, it's great, it was just a basic console. But it wasn't a computer. And I first saw the VIC-20 at a friend of mine's house. Well, no, a friend of mine's grandparents' house in Kings Norton. They had a Commodore VIC-20, and I'd never seen one before. So I wanted to take a bit of time today to talk about a computer that, to me, is a very important part of my heritage, shall we say. So, the VIC-20, what is it? Well, it was a computer that was so good, even Captain Kirk himself wanted people to go out and buy it. Now, the VIC-20 is the first colour computer from Commodore, and it's actually officially the first home computer from Commodore. It was marketed not only as a games computer, but a learning tool, a proper computer that your kids could learn how to program. And this was pushed in the advertising with Captain Kirk, William Shatner himself saying, why go out and buy a video game console for roughly the same price, probably a bit more expensive? You can buy a proper computer. The VIC-20 from Commodore is the first computer to use the legendary bread bin design, which is fabulous. I love the bread bin design, and of course this was carried over to the Commodore 64 when that was released in 1983. Although it was a slightly different colour, the VIC-20 is more of a whiter colour than the Commodore 64, unless of course it's as yellowed as hell, which a lot of them are nowadays. Now, although the VIC-20 was released the same year as the ZX81, it's by far the more professional looking computer with a proper case, proper keyboard and colour graphics. But we also need to take into account that the VIC-20 was £290 approximately, compared to the ZX81, which is only around £70. So there was a massive difference, and it's unfair to compare the two machines. Now, the two games I used to play on my friend's grandparents' VIC-20 an awful lot was a Berserk clone called Amok. Love this game. Brilliant. Really, really good. And we'll be taking a look at that later. And a cartridge game from Commodore called Radar Rat Race, which is basically a rip-off of the motocross game. Now, our particular VIC-20 was given to me by one of my wife's friends who found it in the loft boxed up, and apparently they were going to take this to the tip, so there was no way I was going to allow that to happen. So we have been given this VIC-20, and I've got to admit, it is absolutely mint. It doesn't look like it's hardly ever been used before. There's no dust on it. It even came with a Commodore dust cover. It is immaculate. I opened up this VIC-20 back in the summer and made sure I got a heatsink kit for it. So I've heat-sinked the VIC chip, the CPU and some of the RAM chips, so it's as protected as it possibly can be. The VIC-20 was released in 1980, and it followed about 3 years after the PET and was Commodore's first true venture into the home computing market. It featured the same MOS 6502 CPU as the PET, and the VIC is named after its video chip, the MOS Technology VIC chip, with VIC standing for Video Interface Chip. By the end of 1982, the VIC-20 went on to sell over 1 million units, and on release it sold for $299 so it was far from cheap. By 1982, sales were in decline, and later that summer, Commodore announced its replacement, the much more powerful Commodore 64, which ended up obviously sharing the same case design. The VIC-20 was discontinued in January 1985. The VIC-20 had 5 kilobytes of RAM, of which 3583 are available to BASIC. The 6502 MOS CPU runs at 1.10 MHz, 20 kilobytes of ROM, and RAM was expandable to up to 32 kilobytes. Text mode on this machine was a chunky 22 rows by 23 columns and featured 8 by 8 pixel characters, with a graphical high resolution mode of 176 by 184 pixels with 16 colours. Now, let's take a look at our one here, which is a VIC-20, not a VIC-20, which means this one was originally meant for the German-speaking market. The reason it's not called the VIC-20 in Germany is because the pronunciation of VIC in German apparently sounds like a German curse word. It has a 44-pin I/O expansion bus for peripherals and cartridges, a 5-pin DIN AV connector, a serial bus for disk drives and printers, a cassette connector, an RS-232 user port, and one Atari-style 9-pin joystick port. Now you'll note that the VIC-20 doesn't have the familiar RF socket on its casing. That is because it doesn't have an RF modulator inside. This was apparently due to FCC regulations, although I still don't understand what the problem was, because almost every other machine around this time did have a UHF TV RF socket. You can actually plug the VIC-20 into a standard TV, but you need the UHF TV RF modulator, which we do actually have here, and this is what it looks like. Let's take a look at two games, Amok and Radar Rat Race, to give you an idea of what the Commodore VIC-20 was all about. Right, so this is a Berserk clone. If you've ever seen Berserk before, you have probably seen this game. You're this little chap here, and you can't touch the walls, they're electrified, and you've got these robots trying to kill you. And the different colours of robots indicate how fast they are. So I think the reds or the blacks were the fastest. Yeah, the robots can shoot each other as well, which is quite cool. So if you stay still long enough, they'll probably end up wiping each other out. You can only fire in the direction... Whoops. So you can only fire in the direction you're running. If you stand still, you can't shoot. So you can only shoot in the direction you are actually running in. And the robots can actually shoot each other. So if you leave them to it for long enough, they will wipe each other out. You can only have one bullet on the screen at any one time. Which is a bit of a pain. I love this in 1982. This is probably one of the first computer games I ever played, and I thought it was brilliant. You know, it looks really primitive by today's standards, and if Josh was in here now, he'd be rolling his eyes, but do you know what? It's still playable. I still actually enjoy playing this. And that's just it about these old games, isn't it? I mean, kids look at these games now and think, what on earth is that rubbish? And I get that, I understand that. But when you're brought up on something and it brings back those memories, I think that's what's so good about these old games. They bring back memories, don't they? Now, these guys are tough, I think. They're fast. Now, if I'm going to stand here, they'll just wipe each other out, I think. Yep, look at them go. Look at them wipe each other out. Now, if only I'd learnt this strategy when I was 9 or 10. So I believe these are the fastest. And the best strategy is probably to keep distance because their bullets are pretty fast. See what I mean? So that's Amok. So you're the blue rat, and the idea is you run around the maze and you pick up the cheeses that you can see in the radar section there on the right hand side. And you can drop a scent like that, which puts the other rats off your tail. And that music will drive you mad after a short period of time. It's alright. Oh, here they all come. They're all coming right towards me, so... No, I think they're confused. The cats will kill you. If you touch the cats, they will kill you. And yes, that music does go on and on and on. It looks like I'm running out of time as well. Oh dear. Yeah, I'm dead. Oh dear. And the whole thing repeats itself with more rats. That's Radar Rat Race. I can't really say a lot about that, really, can I? Radar Rat Race on the Commodore VIC-20. So once again, thank you very much for watching. If you like what we do, please hit that subscribe button, or give us a thumbs up if you liked the video, or a thumbs down if you did not. Thank you very much to some of the people that have messaged Josh and said that he will be missed. I think he was quite touched by that, because Josh didn't think for 1 minute that anybody would miss him from the shed, which I told him was absolutely nonsense, because half the fun of the channel that we have been doing for the past nearly 2 years now is the arguments and the banter and the fun that we have together. But he will be popping in from time to time, like I said last week. So thank you very much for watching. Take care. Have a good weekend. Bye bye.